What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of thefantasyfootballfanatics.com. This is Tuesday, February 20th. I'm your host, Griffin Palmer, joined by the one and only CJ, the Hitman Hickman. CJ, what's up, bud?
What's up, man? Wakanda forever. What's going on, man? How y'all doing?
So for everyone wondering where you were on Friday's show, you were seeing a movie, and I guess you just kind of tip your hat there, watching some Black Panther. How was it? No spoilers,
no spoilers, but it was excellent, man. Please, if you haven't, go check it out. Go check it out. Then after you check it out, go check it out again, man. It was a great origin movie, man, and it had everything as far as action, drama, and it was a real good take on Black Panther, man. I enjoyed it, and can't wait to see Infinity Wars when he comes back in it.
It's been a couple months since a comic book movie came out. I think people tend to forget just how much of kind of nerds we are here. So yeah, comic book movie, go see it. And let's move on with the show. Today we have an amazing show for you guys today, as we always do. Today we are continuing the series of must-save shows for the offseason as we continue our prep into the 2018 season, guys. We are less than a month away from the free agency, the start to the new league year, and we are recapping and breaking down the wide receiver position from 2017. Of course, covering all the facts, the trends, if it was a mirage, if it is sustainable, where they're going, if that's where they should be going, and many more points. And, of course, we'll also cover all the top headlines from around the league. Not too many to get to, but we'll cover what's important. Also, make sure you guys subscribe wherever you're listening. If you're just downloading the show today for the first time, hello, welcome. Welcome to what we have here as our show. It's a fun experience and an educational one. But we are a year-round podcast. We are going to be here every Tuesday and Friday, bringing you guys the stuff you need to know, and this time of year, prepping into next season. It's good stuff. We are wherever you are listening: iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Podcast Addict, various other streaming services. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. If you want to support the show and go a step further, head over to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Get yourselves a bonus podcast every single week, and a lot more useful user in-depth stuff. And we've added a new tier where if you guys help us out to a certain extent, you can even get some Skype calls with us. So, some real personal getting to know us, and of course, question answering, fantasy football stuff. So it's good stuff, guys. Head over there. But if financially you cannot help support what we're doing and help us keep these lights on, we understand. If you want to help the show out anyway, a free way you can do that. That really, really helps us out more than we could ever say. Go to any one of those streaming services. The one that seems to help the most is iTunes. Please give us a rating, give us a review. 5-star reviews are incredibly helpful to the show. We cannot stress that enough. We thank you greatly in advance, and we'll read them on the show when we get them. I honestly haven't checked in a while. I should check and see if there's any we should read. Check back on Friday. So anyway, let's move on to our top headlines from around the league, and we'll start at the quarterback position, where NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, he is seconding a earlier report from ESPN New York reporter that the New York Jets are, quote, willing to pay a lot of money to get Kirk Cousins, maybe more than anyone else, end quote. So this is not surprising because we know the Jets are really up there in cap space. We talked about how, it was like Never Jets, the scam for Sam, how the Jets were going to do everything in their power to basically purge salary cap and basically write off the 2017 season and move into the 2018. We thought they were going to be going for a rookie, but it seems like they have their guns set on getting the top free agent quarterback. So we talked about this kind of extensively before the show, CJ. What are your thoughts on Kirk Cousins, more seriously now, possibly landing with the Jets?
Well, for the Jets, I mean, I can see where they're coming from. They want to establish still young, relatively young quarterback they could be able to build around of. But if they go through that move, I can talk myself into maybe liking the situation. You got Quincy Enunwa there. You still got Matt Forte there. He's still
he's probably going to be a cap casualty though.
He could be a cap casualty, but there's a scenario where I can see him probably staying. Of course, you got Bilal Powell still there, and then you got Austin Farrah-Jenkins. They might be bringing that. Then you still don't know about my spirit animal, Robbie Anderson, his situation.
I would expect him to be gone.
He might be gone too, but hey, a guy can hope. But there's still, so if all that's still going there, that's still young talent there, a very young team that overachieved this past season, that did pretty well. That might happen. But from what we've been talking about, like we were talking about before the show, Kirk Cousins has been coming out and been pretty honest, saying that he'd be willing to even take a pay cut to go to a better teams that are in playoff or in contention for something more competitive situation. And right now, the Jets, with their offensive situation, where it's structured right now, I think that's kind of opposite of where he would want to go, to be honest, for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to talk about because obviously, like you just said, he has said that he will go to a place and take a pay cut to play there if it's for a competitor, and yet we're talking about a team like the Jets who we know have a lot of cap space and are willing to spend the money to get their guy. So it's possible, and you mentioned some of the weapons. I mean, obviously Quincy Nunwa, but he's coming back from, it was a ACL, I believe it was.
Right.
Robbie Anderson, we have no idea what his status is going to be going to next year, probably facing possible legal, I would assume most likely league-mandated repercussions, probably a suspension. Like you mentioned, Austin Severian-Jenkins, who was very good during the middle of the season, kind of fell off, and he had a ton of touchdowns that were called back. I mean, we could be talking about him in a very different light in a couple of weeks, or actually next week's Tuesday show when we cover the tight end review. But obviously it didn't happen. So, I mean, they have some depth. You know, our Darius Stewart was a third-round pick from last year that they have. Delvin Smith was a second-round pick from 2 years ago. These are guys that are in the wings. A lot of other no-names really behind that. So, I mean, this team, we know, as I mentioned at the top of this, is kind of in a rebuilding mode, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they progress and where they go from here. Because, they've got other pass catchers. I mean, Bilal Powell can catch a ball. Elijah McGuire they seem to like. I don't know. I just don't know if it's going to be attractive enough because this defense, which is also supposed to be a selling point of the team, they're probably going to end up cutting Muhammad Wilkerson, we've heard, and it's just kind of falling apart besides a couple of young talents that they have there. So I don't know if this is going to be attractive enough for Kirk Cousins no matter what the paycheck is. I mean, I say that as, somebody that doesn't have a say in it because realistically, right. I think if someone throws some crazy, stupid $100+ million contract at me, I'd probably go play anywhere. But that's just me. But for Kirk Cousins looking to win championships, he's got money, and they're just greener pastures else out there. Sorry, Jets fans, if you're out there, but I would say that the Jets definitely have a chance at landing him because they are going to be apparently willing to spend so much. But I don't know if it will be enough to get him there, if that makes sense.
Sure.
This team is probably a couple years out. They're definitely in the midst of a rebuilding, and I think Kirk Cousins they're going to try and pick up as their first building piece, but I don't know if he's going to want to be that guy. Anything you want to add?
No, that's pretty.
We're good? All right, let's keep moving. Let's go to the running back position, where the Miami Herald's Barry Jackson said, quote, "It would not be remotely surprising," end quote, talking about the Miami Dolphins showing interest in Denver Broncos running back C.J. Anderson should he be released. Okay, well, I mean, we knew that C.J. Anderson is in this conversation. We broke him down on last week's show. C.J., what are your thoughts on C.J. Anderson becoming a Miami Dolphin in that Adam Gase system?
Well, I mean, to be honest, you got to know that this probably was going to happen because not that long ago when the free agency period was happening and C.J. Anderson's name did come up, Miami was a spot. So Miami was interested back then. So you got to figure that they're probably still interested now. Now, overall with the situation, if it does happen, I wouldn't be surprised because, like I said, this team showed interest. They said that they were interested. It didn't work out at the moment because at the time, Denver was still. I mean, they just came off the championship, so they were floating on with the numbers, what the numbers going to look like, and ended up working out right then. I really don't see why Denver would want to get away from him right now. Maybe it's just a cap casualty where he's.
Oh, it's totally cap casualty, yeah.
But I still think he was good in that system. And that's just me. I think he should be set. But now going into Miami, the real question is, has Kenyon Drake not showed you enough if you're Miami that he can't be the guy? Like that's the real question I'm looking at. Where now I was like, you're basically doing the same thing you did when Jay Ajayi was there. And now Kenyon Drake is going to be back to being the gadget player where to me personally, he's shown that he can be the number one back in that system and take on that first, second, and third down roles.
Yeah, you basically took my point right off from under me. I thought Kenyon Drake looked really, really good there. To peel back the curtain, I was trying to get him to go back and download last week's show, but you kind of pointed it out. Yeah, C.J. Anderson, it's a cap thing, but I don't know if it's actually going to happen because it's a $4.5 million cap hit. But the positive for cutting him is that he's owed zero dead cap, so they can cut him and save that full $4.5 million. So it'll be probably something towards trying to get the aforementioned Kirk Cousins from the last thing we talked about. But yeah, Kenyon Drake, I thought he looked really good, especially when they started giving him the ball more and he kind of established himself. They show that they did like Damian Williams. There was kind of that back and forth, so that is something. But behind them, it's not a lot. So maybe it's a depth move. Maybe they like him to bring in like a veteran presence because both these guys are obviously not super aged in the league. I don't know. It's confusing to me, but I could see it. So CJ Anderson, another potential landing spot, and in this Adam Gase system, he could be good. I mean, we've seen running backs do well under Adam Gase in the past, and CJ Anderson had some good years with him, right? They were together in Denver, weren't they?
Right, they were.
Yeah,
They were.
towards the the end of Adam Gase's tenure, the very beginning of CJ Anderson. So I could see it. So, yeah, something to definitely monitor as we go forward. Let's go to the wide receiver position, where Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland Plain Dealer confirms that free agent Terrell Pryor will be, quote, on the Browns' radar, end quote, this offseason. This is just confirming many other reports that we've heard to this exact same thing. Terrell Pryor's first full year as a wide receiver, also his best year as a wide receiver back in 2016. Maybe the Browns want to bring him back, and I think that might be good for Terrell Pryor, and especially he won't have to be the number one there, and they'd be able to use him as kind of a gadget piece with Josh Gordon and all the other pieces. Do you think that for fantasy, that's a good landing spot for Terrell Pryor at this point?
I think it's a good prodigal son story for Terrell Pryor. If you're a little biblical story and you know what the story with that he goes out, spends all of his riches, ends up looking at himself, gets down to the dump, and now he's eating from a pigsty, quote unquote, the Redskins, and seeing how bad it was out there. Let me come back to my father's house. Let me get the ring on my finger and the sandals. Look, the Browns with Hugh Jackson, they brought Terrell Pryor in there, gave him the opportunity to be a wide receiver, and he showed out. Had an amazing year with them, and he banked on himself. I'm not going to throw salt on him for banking on himself and going out there, going to Washington and looking like the number one guy. But everybody saw it. We weren't blind to what he did out there in Washington. It was absolutely horrendous. He was garbage. I don't know what happened. Why there was no connection between him and Kirk Cousins, why he couldn't get going within the offense.
They just never built a rapport. And
nothing. That's it. It was just nothing going on there. Anything they tried, it just didn't work. So now I think for him, because right now what is being looked at is that he can't handle being the main guy. He can't handle the role. I think that's incorrect. I think if it's all about systems with certain players, some people can overcome the system, and some people need to be in the right system to be that guy. He looks like at the moment right now, he looks like he needs to be in the right system to be that guy. And I think that system was with the Cleveland Browns.
Well, they never seem to be on the same page, that being Terrell Pryor and Kirk Cousins. We knew all about that. Deep ball connections didn't connect very often because they were using him in that Deshaun Jackson role, that basically more times than not 9 route or at least deep slant type guy going to the post. I just don't know, because Josh Gordon and Corey Coleman are there. Obviously David Njoku is also going to be going out of the tight end position, going out catching passes. So I mean, does he fill in to one of those starting outside guys and they bump someone like Corey Coleman to the inside, or is it a rotation? I don't know.
I think I can see Corey Coleman. I can see them bumping Corey Coleman into the inside to be the slot guy. Yeah, and then just because the side and speed of Terrell Pryor, I think he can be back out there, and I think he once again can flourish like he did a couple years ago when he was there. And I think overall the offense will flow a lot better if that happens like that, because Corey Coleman's explosiveness in the slot, I think he can take advantage of that third cornerback. And depending on, if they go get Sam Darnold, if that's that guy, that slot guy is normally the tight end and the slot guy are the rookie quarterback's best friend. So I think Corey Coleman might actually have a big year if that happens.
Completely writing off Deshaun Kaiser at this point.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, the organization is doing it. So,
yeah,
I mean, I'm just following suit. You know what I'm saying?
That's the Browns. Sorry, Cleveland Brown fans. Yeah. But you just put a second round pick into the guy. But yeah, no, Sam Darnold is obviously a much higher touted talent. I mean, it's the same thing to Cody Kessler the year prior, but that was a third round pick. Regardless, I agree. I'll be interested to see how they use him. Obviously, Josh Gordon is an outside guy. I don't see them using him any other way, so it's going to be between these two. Duke Johnson's going to be there to catch dump-offs. We don't know if they're bringing back Isaiah Crowell or not. And, David Njoku, like we already talked about. Seth Duvall could get involved again, kind of catching some passes. He had some moments. This team's going to be interesting. But if they do bring in Terrell Pryor, I think the Browns are kind of sneakily putting together a decent offense, and not to mention bringing in Todd Haley as their offensive coordinator. That maybe he'll get it going. So we'll see. All right, with that, let's move on to our topic of the day, which is the lessons we learned in 2017, talking about the wide receiver position. We're going to start with the number one wide receiver on the season. Yes, even still, though he went through a plethora of quarterbacks, and he is the one and only DeAndre Hopkins. CJ, I'm going to throw this to you because this is one of your guys. Actually, the top four guys are really your guys.
Yeah, man. This is my dude, man. Listen, first of all, I always said, even if you go back and listen to the show, and you look, and when we were talking about the draft season, when they went and got my man Deshaun Watson, I said this is going to be money for my man Dre, man, Hopkins, man. It's gonna be money for him just because Deshaun being mobile as he is, and he's a great pocket passer. He can be able to get out in the pocket and still get the ball down the field. The plays, when this guy finally got the opportunity to be the dude, the plays these two were making, and even my man, the other speedster, Will Fuller, that was crazy too. It's all about the quarterback at the end of the day. When we start to run down these lists of these receivers, man, it's about the quarterback play that brought the greatness out of them. And then even in the midst of doing that, we saw the fantasy points back up everything that we were talking about. Soon as Deshaun got out there, Hopkins went out there. He's already been doing this with crap quarterback play. Now you get him a good quarterback. And the numbers that he put up was absolutely ridiculous. What is this, 213.80 fantasy points? He would have had more if Deshaun got injured. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I love him going into next year because you got a full off season and them two getting some more chemistry going out. They're most likely going to go bring some more depth into the offensive line to protect Deshaun and give him more time back there. Everything is looking up right now as far as this Houston's offensive game and for Hopkins.
I should specify that this is all based on standard scoring, these rankings. But yeah, I mean, from the first full game that Deshaun Watson played, which was that kind of abomination game at Cincinnati in week 2, and he got you 7.3, and that was the lowest he ever got you with Deshaun Watson. 7.6, 16.7, 23.2. Little dip in Cleveland, which is kind of strange, 7.9, and then 28.4. So, I mean, he was consistently doing well to great with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson should be back next season, healthy, ready to go. And, I mean, I agree. It could be awesome. Now, we've had this debate and this conversation of who's going to go as the number one quarterback off the board. Should it be DeAndre Hopkins, based on the scenario that we're talking about right now and the pace he was on, not to mention the fact that even with everything that happened last year, he still finished as the wide receiver one. Well, right now he's going as the number 2 wide receiver off the board as the 7th pick in the first round. So, I mean, he obviously repaid on value because he was taken as the 14th wide receiver last season. So, CJ, does that sound right to you as the number 2?
Number 2? Yeah. Well, number 2, I mean, I still got respect for Odell Beckham. But as far as preference-wise, I still see it's out of the quarterbacks between Eli and Deshaun. I'm still gonna go Deshaun right now because Eli, with the Giants, they still haven't shown me enough as far as putting protection around him so he can be able to get the ball down the field. So I would probably have to say yes. I want to put Odell there just because the overall talent there, and he can overcome the foolishness that happens with the offensive line and Eli. But it's just too good of a picture. And it looks too good right now with Deshaun in that offense.
So do we just get a secret look into your preliminary rankings where I'm assuming you then have Antonio Brown as your number 3 wide receiver?
You don't know nothing. You didn't see anything right now.
I see nothing. I see nothing. Well, I mean, yeah, and this was a great year, and this was always my knock against DeAndre Hopkins for years. And you guys, if you go back and listen to the last couple off seasons of the show, I have been the most down on DeAndre Hopkins, and not because of talent, not because of ability, but because of quarterback play and the necessity for volume. And he got a lot of volume. He had 96 catches this year, which is not the most in his career, but it was really good. He had 1,378 yards. He had 13 touchdowns, which was a career high. If he can get those numbers at any type of sustainable pace, yeah, I mean, he's definitely worth going as the number 1 wide receiver off the board. He definitely has an argument for him. I haven't done my wide receiver rankings yet, my preliminary ones, to be completely honest. But I mean, man, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to have to stat them out and see what I think's going to do, because I'm going to let my stats do the talking more than where my heart lies with these guys. But yeah, DeAndre Hopkins going as the 7th pick in the first round right now. So there you go. Number 2, we have Antonio Brown, 209.3 fantasy points. He's currently going as the number 1 wide receiver off the board yet again. Well, I say yet again. He was taken as the number 2 last year, which shocked me when I went back and looked at it, because none of our mock drafts, nothing I saw, none of our write-ins, none of our team rosters that we saw, people telling us where they were drafting, none of it showed Antonio Brown going number 2, because Julio Jones went number 1, according to Fantasy Draft Calculator. So, crazy, but it happened. Well, as of right now, Antonio Brown going as the number 1 wide receiver off the board as the 4th pick in the first round. So, CJ, how about, I'll ask you this. So that means they're taking Antonio Brown over one of the 4 main running backs, over Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Todd Gurley, and Ezekiel Elliott. Would you take Antonio Brown over any one of those 4 guys?
Well, to be honest, you're getting more production out of those running backs over Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown by himself is just that legit elite type receiver where I wouldn't scoff if you did do it. But right now in today's fantasy and where the trend is going right now, I'm seeing more running backs going ahead of these elite receivers. So I can see all those receivers, running backs that you named, I can see people picking them before Antonio Brown and being justified in thinking it, just because they're going to get the ball a lot more versus what you think Antonio Brown's production he's going to be for that year. Even though he is that number 1 guy in that offense, he's getting the touches, he's getting the touchdowns, he's getting the opportunities. But once again, those running backs are going to touch the ball a lot more than versus him.
You want to hear something crazy?
What?
Antonio Brown, we mentioned, is going as the 4th player off the board. Number 5. So Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, and Ezekiel Elliott are 1, 2, and 3 right now. Number 5 is another running back, but it's not David Johnson. It is Alvin Kamara, who is holding that position. So oh man, that's such a high bust rate, like we talked about a couple of shows back. All right, I mean, hey, if he can keep that if he can sustain that production, more power to him. I'm not at a point yet where I'm willing to buy into that. But anyway, let's talk about Antonio Brown. That's why we're here. So, CJ, talk to me about his season and tell me why you think Antonio Brown is deserving of being the number 1 wide receiver off the board yet again. So maybe not in your rankings, but here he is overall.
Yeah, overall, man, this dude has been absolutely amazing. I mean, it's all about consistency. When you talk, even when we talk about outside of fantasy, when you talk about who's the number 1 wide receiver in the league, you got to mention Antonio Brown. The numbers there, the touchdowns, the ability to make the ridiculously consistent catches, and him being that guy in that offense, man. The dude misses games. He comes back in the playoffs, going against one of the top defenses in the NFL, and he still goes out there, has a banging day against a top defense. And throughout the whole season, he was making plays. I mean, you'll go back to that Thursday night game against Tennessee. He was making those boys look foolish out there, like little kids guarding him, man. These are grown men. They get paid to do this sport, and he's teaching them how to guard him in the midst of burning them while it's going on. And he continues to do this. So me personally, there's no other wide receiver in this league that I can put over Antonio Brown, just because of the consistency, how long he's been doing it, and he does it every single day. And the numbers, even though I one year I wanted him to go over 20, and I think he's able to go over 20, is all about his quarterback with his home away from the road adversity is just ridiculous. The ratio is stupid, but this dude overall, he's money. He's money.
Yeah, I mean, he's been widely the most consistent and just fantastic wide receiver that there has been for fantasy. I mean, everybody's contesting he's the best in real life the last couple of years, and the numbers are there to back it up. I mean, he's had over 1,000 yards each of the last 5 seasons. He's had, 8 touchdowns was the lowest he's had during that time. Most of the time he's been at least double digits. He's been pretty consistently healthy as well. I mean, before 2013, he missed some time, but since then, he missed 1 game in 2016, concussion. And then obviously last year he missed a few games, so that was because of the tear he got in his calf. But he came back in the playoffs. So, I mean, he came back and he was able to perform, and he played well. So I'm not worried about injury yet. He's 29. He will be 30 at the start of the season. So that's something to think about. But, again, age is not yet concerning to me. He's just been phenomenal. Again, 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns last season, 101 receptions, and he did that in 14 games. So the dude is insane. And Ben Roethlisberger, we already know, is going to be back. We're all expecting Le'Veon Bell to be back. The situation is kind of up in the air as far as Martavis Bryant, Juju Smith-Schuster, Darius Hayward-Bay, who's going to kind of fill in as that number 2 full-time. We think it's going to be Juju, and Martavis might be released, but we'll see how that all plays out. That's just rumors and things that we've been hearing. They might keep all these guys. Who knows? But I really, really think that there's no reason to be scared of Antonio Brown right now, and if you want a safe, sure pick, I don't think it gets much safer than taking Antonio Brown as the top wide receiver off the board. Agreed?
I agree, man. I hope everything continues with this, and people love their running back. So finally this year, I can finally get Antonio Brown on my team. Hopefully.
What, have you ever had him on your team?
I've had him in our keeper league just because, I just been keeping him. But as far as trying to draft him in an actual league, like an auction or even standard, absolutely not. Because people in auction, his numbers as far as pricing go up ridiculously high. And it's just, even the love I have from him, I can't justifiably putting it into one wide receiver. I just can't.
So you've never had him in our league of record?
No, never had him.
I have, and it was
I know you did.
It was that fantastic 2015 season, 136 catches, 1,800 yards, 10 touchdowns. That was actually a low of touchdowns, sandwiched between a 13 and a 12 touchdown season. That's too bad.
Yeah. Must have been nice.
But that was the only year I had him. I think that was still, everybody was kind of jumping on like Calvin Johnson then. That was like his last year. Yeah. So I was able to get him somewhat cheap, which was shocking to me, but I'll take it. Anywho, enough talk about us. No one cares about our leagues. Let's move on to yet another guy of yours, CJ. You were on fire this offseason.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen. It's too bad it didn't translate to championships. Ayo. Sorry.
It was a Super Bowl, though, baby.
Woo! I mean, your love of fantasy wide receivers doesn't really translate to your Eagles, but
it's fine.
However you want to quantify it, I'm okay with it. 176.2 fantasy points. Finished number 3. He was taken as the 13th wide receiver off the board. He's going currently as the number 8 wide receiver off the board. So, CJ, since this is your guy, let me throw it to you again. Tell me about Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen, man, my man. Listen, look, for those doubters out there that say, well, Keenan Allen, he can't stay healthy. He got all the time in the world. The man just can't stay healthy. He hasn't shown you a full season. Bam, look, here it is. He did it. He did his thing, comeback player of the year. He went out there, played a heck of a season with that, and it's only going to get better. Why is it only get better? Because once again, this offense has been struggling with injuries with the offensive line. Those guys that they drafted this year that was supposed to help and fix that and solidify that, they're coming back. They're going to come back with another season under Philip Rivers, have more experience in the NFL, and then, of course, they're going to make some even more pieces. You got those other wide receivers that's going to be a part of this offense that can probably take away the coverage so you can't double Keenan Allen. You're going to have to pay attention to the rest of the weapons there. And then so as far as yardage goes, I see his yardage still stay the same. So he's still going to be good for you there. He might touches. It might be make a hit just because of other weapons there. But touchdowns, I think touchdowns those are going up. I just honestly believe those touchdowns are going up. And you're with him, I'm always looking for him. If I can't get these top guys that we've been talking about, Keenan Allen, I'm always looking out for him just because I know he's basically got the same chemistry going on with him and Rivers like Antonio Brown has with Ben Roethlisberger. Don't you agree, Griffin?
I mean, I definitely agree, and it's amazing how much different this offense looks when he's in there and he's healthy. And the stats back up the trends. We were talking about his 2015 season, a lot last season or 2 seasons ago going into 2016 where he obviously got hurt in the first game. But, I mean, if he was able to sustain that pace, he was amazing top 5 wide receiver. Obviously, 2016 didn't happen, but he was able to put it all together in 2016. Played his first full season, 102 receptions. He's kind of got that PPR aspect to him, obviously, there. That's a triple-digit receptions is huge. Just under 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns, kind of like you were saying, not quite what we would like to see. And you think it's going to go up. I don't know if I buy that, only because there's just this team is just loaded with pass catching talent. They have done a fantastic job of surrounding Phillip Rivers with talent. I mean, Tyrell Williams is a guy that I really, really like there, and he's really flashed, and especially when given opportunity. Mike Williams, who is basically a red zone weapon, their first round pick last year, he's going to be hopefully healthy for the whole year, have a whole offseason, and be probably a lot more productive. Travis Benjamin's really good. They've got a couple other guys in the wings there that have some upside. Tight ends, we know Hunter Henry. Antonio Gates, if he does end up being brought back, it'd be interesting because he has
no, that shouldn't be a thing. But I see what your point.
It shouldn't be a thing, but everything we're hearing is that he might, because he's saying that he kind of wants to. So we'll see. But as we've also said, if Antonio Gates does retire, that just means Hunter Henry's going to be in more, and Hunter Henry is very much a red zone weapon as well, though also useful between the 20s. Melvin Gordon can catch the ball. Andre Williams can catch the ball. There's a lot of pass catchers here. So, I mean, the yardage, I see him being able to repeat, especially as this really shifty guy who can play. He can shift inside. He can bounce outside. He's good at contested catches. He's got this PPR aspect to him. He can kind of do it all, which is great, and break some tackles, create some big plays. So the yardage I see is repeatable. I don't know how much I can see him exceeding this touchdown total. I mean, he's...
What, 6? You don't think he can go over 6 for this upcoming season?
I'll put it to you this way. The most he's ever had in his career is 8 in a season, and I would probably put his cap somewhere around 8, personally. If a lot of these other players go down, absolutely, I buy it 100%. I think his chances go way up, but I think he's much more of a yardage guy with touchdown upside than the opposite, because there's just a lot of other guys on this team that are bigger than him and therefore are much more mismatches in the red zone and more likely to be targeted there. And I think that's what's translated to his touchdown totals. So we'll see. But again, a great option and a guy who you can get right now in the second round, mid to late second round as well, who finished as a top 3 wide receiver. Yeah, great option. If you go running back early, this is a good guy to build your wide receiver core around. I would recommend, though, if you do go Keenan Allen, that you handcuff him a little bit with another wide receiver in the third. Maybe you're going to have to force yourself to wait at second running back, because he does have a long injury history, vast majority of which are all lower body. Those things tend to linger. They take some time to recover, not to mention the severe clavicle, collarbone injuries he's had. So he's risky, but we've seen the reward is definitely worth it when he can stay healthy. So, yeah, Keenan Allen right there, your number 3 wide receiver on the season. Number 4, yet another one of CJ's guys. I'm glad you're here for this show.
We're doing it. Me and Jason's guy. We believed in this guy this year, and he produced. He produced.
I was skeptical, and I think rightfully so, even looking in hindsight and reviewing the tape. But I mean, he was able to capitalize on all the positive aspects of what I was saying, completely into everything you guys were saying, and that is Tyreek Hill, 164.2 fantasy points. He finished as the number 4 wide receiver. He was taken as the 20th, so I mean that was a steal. But he's currently going as the 15th wide receiver, as the 10th pick in the third round. CJ, tell me about Tyreek Hill. Tell me why he's so good. Tell me why he's going so late.
Well, first of all, I'll tell you about Tyreek Hill, man. He went into this season, man, as the number 1 guy. As the Chiefs let go Jeremy Maclin, he was going in and taking up that role. To be honest, if you ask for my opinion, I think he did spectacular.
He did.
Now, I see people as far as the criticism going in, the critics going into this season, why people were kind of down on him. Well, first, you got Alex Smith throwing you the ball. Alex Smith is a deacon dunk guy that stays in the 10 to 15 range. He doesn't really go that often past 20 yards down the field.
Nope.
But this year, because the pressure that was behind him with Patrick Mahomes, he showed a different side of himself, and he got the opportunity to Tyreek Hill. We saw the first game, the first opener for the season against the Patriots, and they're throwing the ball down the field. Tyreek Hill is getting amazing work down the field. They were doing these gadget type plays. He was getting involved, and as far as the number 1 receiver for him, freshman year, trying this role out and being that guy, I think he succeeded. Now, why is he going low? Once again, when we were talking about this, when we talked about the fallout of the trade between Alex Smith going to the Washington Redskins, and what's the impact for the Chiefs? Look, the Chiefs, they got their guy. They got the guy that they want to go out there. Now, with fantasy owners and probably critics are saying is this guy's still a rookie, so we don't know what he's going to be able to bring to this. We know he's got a cannon, we know he's got an arm, but can that translate to the NFL? Yeah, we saw a little game, a brief glimpse of it this past season, but that was going against the second, third unit. I mean, look, those teams weren't even really playing like that. It was towards the end of the season, so you got that. So once again, if he's going as the 15th pick, I'm taking him. Because I think he's going to go once again. I think he's going to have an even better year that he had with Alex Smith, because you have a natural deep ball passer and Patrick Mahomes that's going to get the ball to Tyreek Hill. And I think you should just be laughing at the rest of the people in your league that's going to sleep on him just because they're scared and not knowing what you're going to be able to get. Third round pick and you got a number one wide receiver, man. Hey, that's a risk I'm willing to take.
I'm going to be the voice of caution here, but I'm agreeing with what you're saying at the same time, because if I can get him as almost a fourth-round pick, yeah, I'm buying into that, absolutely. But, I mean, the concern here is exactly that. Alex Smith is gone. Tyreek Hill made a lot of his production with his legs. He got these shorter dump-off passes, made a couple guys miss, and just took it for big gains, if not a touchdown. He had 75 receptions for just under 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. Pretty darn good. But with Patrick Mahomes there, he's going to get more deep balls. I don't know if he's going to succeed incredibly well there unless he's really able to break open, which I think he will be able to. I mean, he's got that route running. He's agile. He's going to probably juke some guys out. But, yeah. I mean, he's only 5'10", so he's 5'10", 185. So he's definitely a smaller wide receiver, which is kind of why he's this interesting hybrid inside-outside guy. But volume, though, is going to be key here, and he's going to get quite a bit of it because, I mean, besides Tyreek Hill, the rest of the wide receiving core, unless you are a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I bet you the vast majority of people out there can't even name you their number 2 wide receiver, much less their third and their fourth. I mean, it's Tyreek Hill, it is Travis Kelce at tight end, and it's Kareem Hunt. We saw that this year into the playoffs, and then when one of those guys went down, the offense kind of stalled out because they lost a piece of what they're doing. It was basically all 3 of these guys run the offense through Alex Smith. A fantastic game manager. He was always able to read the defense, find the guy who was going to be open, got the ball to them, and that's how they move things. So I expect that to continue to be the case with a couple more deep shots. We'll see how that plays out. And maybe that's why he's dropped down, because people aren't buying into Patrick Mahomes as much, too, because obviously he's a younger guy. He's obviously not going to be a rookie. It'll be his sophomore season, but it'll be his first extended exposure to the NFL. So maybe people are just building in that little bit of cushioning. They're hedging their bets here a little bit. I can see it, but I think that as a guy I can get almost in the 4th round could very much be worth the pick, though I expect him to probably be gone before he gets to me there. So, yeah, Tyreek Hill. Anything else you want to add, CJ?
I'm just saying, when you look at these guys, these type of players, and you see what the value and how late they're going, and you hear a lot of negative responses to them, and justifiably so. Just everything that you just said, I agree with, and I can see the caution. But once again, when we're looking at fantasy football and you look at these top players like this, there's not a lot of top guys at number 1 positions in the number 1 receiver in their offense, where the offense is basically built. And when you go back and look at Andy Reid's system, the number 1 guy is built to succeed. You got
absolutely,
Jeremy Maclin, Deshaun Jackson, Terrell Owens one year, even their slot guys, Jason Avant, all these different type players right here. You got Andy Reid has never had a dude like Tyreek Hill since Deshaun Jackson. He loves to throw the ball deep. That's his biggest criticism, biggest knock on him, and he wouldn't run the ball. So he's going to pass that thing. Tyreek Hill is that burner in that offense that's always going to get that rock. So if you're like you said, you basically 4th round pick for a number 1 wide receiver, oh man, I'm taking that all day. Let you be twiddling your thumbs and you doing the pros and cons. I'm taking that guy and watching him be that finished number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. That's what I'm doing.
Now, last year we talked about him as kind of being this more of a sure thing based on volume. I mean, obviously I made some counter arguments to that because it was a little bit risky because we hadn't seen him as the lone wide receiver out there with Jeremy Maclin being gone, which, man, did the Chiefs know something that the rest of the league didn't. But is he still a sure thing, or do we think with Patrick Mahomes in there and the way things are going to shift around, does he have a little bit more of the risk-reward aspect here, or do you think it's a pretty safe thing with a high ceiling?
I think it's a safe thing with a high ceiling because, once again, you got 2 options. Either the kid is going to go out and be everything that you think he was going to be, get the ball down the field, take his rookie bumps. Look, granted, he's a rookie. This was a red shirt year. He's about to go out there and start. He's going to be some bumps. There's going to be some bumps, but I don't think it's going to be that long for him to go out there and have a Deshaun Watson type season where he gets his lumps in the season, but still he's showing progression. And then it's that one game where everything clicks, and then he starts bringing some consistent games where he's getting the ball out and he's getting points for your guys. So I can see going low and picking where people are probably picking them now. But once again, I'm not scoffing on that. I will take that and go my number one running back, or get first good running back, and then take him as my number one wide receiver on my team. I would not be mad at that.
Okay, that's I mean, yeah, that would be a very interesting team when we do some mock drafts coming up. I'd be interested to see how a team plays out if you do that approach. Yeah. So yeah, hey, some stuff to check out. Maybe we'll do that exact scenario on the Patreon show and see what's up. Yeah. I like it, and I agree. So let's move on because we're spending a lot of time on Tyreek Hill. A little bit of risk here, definitely worth a lot of rewards. You know, a lot of upside tied into the guy, and the the Chiefs are going to see if they really get what they wanted, moving away from a safe passer to a risk taker in a sense. You know, they're a gunslinger. They're looking to get over that hump and win some playoff games. So we'll see. All right, let's move on to the number 5 wide receiver on the season, Marvin Jones. Man, did he give you an awesome return. He was the 42nd wide receiver off the board. He finished number 5, but he 164.1 fantasy points, but he's currently going as the 38th wide receiver off the board. That's the 5th pick in the 8th round. CJ, so this was his second year as a Lion. Obviously, things kind of clicked here. He was healthier, but he didn't get an astronomically larger amount of receptions. He didn't get a lot more yards. He over-doubled his touchdowns, which is great. But, I mean, why do you think everyone's so down on Marvin Jones right now?
Well, I think it's consistency. Like we've been talking about with a lot of these receivers. We've been talking about the plus side, the positives about the consistency. Right here, I can see it being a negative. Right now, look, he first came there. When he first came there first season, man, he had a heck of a 6 games, a heck of a half of the season, and then he just disappeared. So I can see people a little skeptical. I mean, he goes into this year, people were low on him, justifiably so. You picked him up, and he has a stellar year for you. Him and Stafford is going off, and then you see the effects that Golden Tate is having. Golden Tate not being that guy. So you're like, what are these guys doing? Are they playing like teeter-totter? Who's going to be good? Who's not going to be not? So maybe he's justifiably so going this low, just because you might be thinking that he's probably going to be having that off year like he did last year on that towards the end of the season. Well, I'm thinking that, listen, it's with these wide receivers and these quarterbacks, man, it's all about time. It's all about the chemistry, and I think that it's going to be. I think Marvin Jones has built himself into this system now where he has been that guy with under what is it, Cooter, right? The Cooter is the offensive coordinator, right?
Jim Bob Cooter, yeah.
Jim Bob Cooter. We're Cooter now, where he's putting him in the right positions and seeing what best suits him and for him to have success. I think that's what's going on right now in Detroit. And I think people that are fans of this guy and people that are looking at his stats, I don't think you should be that concerned of what he's going to do in this year, because you could just trust. I mean, like 76ers, they have this thing going on right now. Trust the process. I think you should still trust the process when it comes to Cooter in this offense with Stafford and these wide receivers. I think they're putting them in better situations where they can be able to bets benefits the team, which is going to best benefits you when it comes to fantasy.
I just think it's interesting because Marvin Jones, I mean, he put it all together this year, and with some consistency, he was pretty good. I mean,
really good.
It's not like he's an injury risk. I mean, he's only missed one game since his rookie season. You have to exclude 2014, of course, but I mean, while actually being active during the year. So it's just strange. I mean, he's 6'2", he's a speedy guy. It must be the risk reward aspect here because it's not a lot of volume. But I mean, I want to point a couple things out, and this might be what ends up, shooting his value up, and then we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot here because this is a guy we can get super late. Golden Tate not a lot of rumblings about this, and not a lot of people are talking about it, but there's a chance that he could be gone. I mean, he did not have an outstanding year, and he is currently owed $9.3 million, but they have an out in his contract this year. It's the last year of his contract with the Lions, and they can cut him for $2.3. They can save $7 million to cut him. Not saying that they will or that they need to, but I've seen some projection sites that are currently saying that Golden Tate is going to be their third wide receiver. They're going to move him into the slot and use Kenny Golladay as their starting left wide receiver, which I'm not going to say would surprise me because Kenny Golladay is much more that outside guy than Golden Tate. So I don't know.
Might be more effective for them too, to be honest.
He might be. I mean, Kenny Golladay was great in flashes when he was healthy this year. So I mean, it's a lot of things that I think could happen that will widely determine Marvin Jones' status. I just find it very intriguing that he's currently going as late as he is. I wouldn't invest a first, second round pick into the guy as he finished here at number 5 overall just because of the volume. I mean, he had 61 receptions this year. That's scary to me, and the touchdowns are unpredictable. You know me, I love consistent things. I like targets, receptions, and yardage. Touchdowns are the perk. I don't know if he's, why that late? 8th round. That's just a steal.
It's a little shot. It's a little disrespectful shot that being that late. But I mean, hey, once again, you look at stuff like this. When you look at things like this, man, you gotta think the other people in your drafts are looking at this and they're buying into it. They're eating it up. They're not doing enough research for their own self, so they're just looking at this and they're like, all right, yeah, well, I'm just not even gonna look at him. And he keeps falling. But here you are, taking the time, doing the research, looking at the trends, and seeing that this guy, he's shown that he can be that dude, and he's putting some consistent tape out there for you, and he's flowing in that offense. Let him go that late. Once again, he can be if they don't trade Golden Tate and they slide him into the slot. Once again, he can be your number 2 wide receiver, and you're getting him that late, and you're still getting tremendous value for him just because the production he's been doing in this offense.
Right. And I mean, a guy who obviously I very much like, Eric Ebron, he has not exactly panned out, so you don't have to worry about him being a huge red zone threat.
He's not a thing.
He had 4 touchdowns this year. I mean, a piece of the offense. He had almost as many receptions. He had 53 receptions, but just under 600 yards. So I don't know what I really don't know what's scaring people off. It might be Kenny Golladay, it might be Golden Tate, but Golden Tate may be gone depending on what the team needs to do for cap space for what they're trying to do. This is all speculation at this point because obviously free agency hasn't started and we've only heard a couple rumblings. It's not like some of these things that we're hearing from multiple sources consistently. It's just interesting. So I would say out of the top, probably all the guys we're talking about today, Marvin Jones is the one that really intrigues me the most. Why he's going almost as the barely a top 40 wide receiver. So but I want to point out one interesting thing really quick before we move on. The top 5 wide receivers from last year: Mike Evans, Jordy Nelson, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., and T.Y. Hilton. Only one of those names repeated, and of course that was Antonio Brown. So some serious flux at what's supposed to be a very sure thing at wide receiver. We just remember 2 years ago the whole 0 RB strategy. You just load up on these safe wide receivers. It's a pass catcher's league. Well, maybe it's just saturated with a lot of talent, or these guys aren't as consistent as they thought. But a guy who is strangely consistent, even though his on-the-play consistency is very suspect to say the least, is our number 6 guy. A guy who we are all much more down on than the masses seem to be, and that is Julio Jones. Number 6 wide receiver a year ago, number 6 finisher this year, 163.9 fantasy points. As we already mentioned earlier on, somehow he was the number 1 wide receiver off the board last year, went as the 5th pick in the first round, which I don't really remember, but that's what all the information's telling me. However, I will say that people maybe are catching on because he's currently going as the 6th pick in the 5th round. Or the 6th pick in the 2nd round. He's the number 5 wide receiver off the board.
God, dog, he fell.
No. He fell like a rock. No. So Julio Jones, look, he under Steve Sarkisian was not as good. The stats, they don't back up that argument, though. He played a full 16 games. He got 88 yards, 1,444 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now let's break that down. A year ago, under Kyle Shanahan, he had 83 receptions, 1,409 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So less receptions, less yards, and double the touchdowns. So you think, okay, so it's somewhat consistent though, right? Well, he played in 2 less games in 2016. So, I mean, you extrapolate that out, he had a much better year. And this is a product of the entire Atlanta Falcons offense really taking a step backwards this year. As we talked about on, I think it was Friday's show with Devontae Freeman, he was the only one that showed some consistency because if you calculate his numbers out over a full season because he missed some time, he was about where he was. Matt Ryan took a step back. All the pass catchers in Atlanta took a step back. That offense statistically across the board took a step back. And Julio Jones, a guy who's been wildly inconsistent throughout his career, I mean, shocker. We heard nothing but, and I think this is maybe why he shot up the board so much, because he was, through all of our rankings and most of the rankings I follow and all the analysts I talk to around the league, most people had him in the 3 to 6 range in their rankings, and that was the people who were pretty pro him too. I mean, we know the upside, we know the build, we know the ability, but the inconsistencies here. But we heard we're going to get him the ball. We're going to use him more in the red zone. Well, he put up the second fewest touchdowns in his career. His only time he put up less touchdowns in a season was 2013 when he only played in 5 games that season. So, CJ, so Steve Sarkisian, he's the offensive coordinator, obviously. We know this now. Mm-hmm. Do you think that things progress in the second year? Because we know that usually these things tend to get better as an offensive coordinator or a head coach is able to be there with some consistency. But, I mean, all the pieces, this entire offense basically returned. It was just the play calling based on what we heard. What are your thoughts here for the Atlanta Falcons moving forward?
Well, you gotta hope that it gets better. You gotta hope. I mean, we did a breakdown show a couple weeks ago, and I brought up some interesting points about that. I mean, the percentage of the red zone. It's always been a big deal with Julio Jones in the red zone, and that's something that this offensive coordinator talked about going into the past off season, leading up to the season, saying that they want to get them more involved in the red zone. Duh, you should do that. He's your number 1 wide receiver. It just never came to pass this past season, man. Most of his stuff was between the 50s, and he getting the touches, like you said, getting the yards, like you said, but those touchdowns. When you talk about an elite wide receiver, Julio Jones, when you're talking about him being the number 1 wide receiver this past offseason, really and the only reason I can seeing that being justifiably so is those two crazy games where he had the crazy yardage, and then plus what he did in the postseason, in the playoffs and leading up to the Super Bowl. All that stuff was great. But once again, those Super Bowl, those postseason numbers, those playoff numbers should have nothing to do with your mindset going into the draft. You got to look at those seasons. You got to look at the reality is he's not going to be playing the Panthers freaking 16 times throughout the seasons. No, he only plays them twice. So those 2 crazy games he had it was only 2 times. The rest of the games, it was average production. And now with this new offensive coordinator, we all called this on the show. I know many fantasy outlets said it was going to be the exact same thing. It's going to be, you're going to see a drop in Matt Ryan. You're going to see a drop in Julio Jones. You're going to see a drop in this wide receiver core just because this is new. This is new, and they don't know the system yet. So going into this next season, do I see it progressing? It has to. It just has to do it. Do I trust it? Not really. I gotta wait and see with this team. But it has to get better because this offense is just too good as far as the talent there for it to succeed and at least do better than what they did this past season.
It just amazes me that okay, so a guy, Julio Jones, who was taken as the number 1 wide receiver off the board. How many games do you think he had, CJ, where he got you double-digit points?
5.
That's it? 5.
Yeah.
He had 5 games where he got you double-digit points, which a couple of those just barely. So, I mean, he's floating on games like his one in Week 12 against Tampa Bay where he had 38.8 fantasy points, and that's what you get when you draft Julio Jones. Amazing boom-bust potential. The problem is, look, if I talk about yardage, I talk about receptions, I talk about usage. That's what I want to build my players around. But if I'm looking at a first, second-round wide receiver, you got to get some touchdowns, man, because that's how you do things. Because, look, his last 2 seasons, he's been in the 80 catch range. If we go back to 2015 where he had 136 catches, sure, I get it. Different argument altogether. But, 80-some catches, 1,400 yards. So he's not getting a lot of catches. He's being able to be productive with them, not getting a lot of touchdowns. That's that's just really hard to bank on year in and year out. So, I mean, it just takes some better coverage maybe, which is going to be hard to cover the guy. But to be fair, he's 29 now, so he isn't his prime, but he's getting a little bit older. I don't expect it to slow him down, but he has had quite the injury history. There's just a lot of things that I think Julio Jones is going to be, and even currently is to an extent, a very polarizing player. People are either going to buy into the upside and knowing the name, what he's capable of, what he can do, or they're going to hedge their bets a little bit and take the safe approach because it's scary. If we talked about, and any listeners of the show probably know this, we've heard it many times. I put a stat together last year where if you take away his one massive game where he had 300 yards and a touchdown in 2016, he finished as a wide receiver too. I'm going to stat out taking away that one Tampa Bay game and see where he finishes this year. We'll talk about that later because I'd be willing to bet if we take that one big game away from him, he drops considerably. Actually, I can tell you just by looking at the stats, if you give him his average throughout the season, he would not even been a wide receiver 1. So he's had one big game each of the last 2 seasons, which land him as a wide receiver 1, which is crazy. And, this is why it's good if you're listening to the show right now, you're thinking about this, about this, because a lot of people are going to look at, oh, he finished as the wide receiver 6 each of the last 2 years. I'm going to draft him. That's a sure thing. Not so much, buddy. Week to week owning Julio Jones, he would lose you weeks. He is your number 1 wide receiver, and he's got plenty of weeks in there where he got you 6 points, 3 points, 7 points, 5 points, 5 points, 2 points. So not at all what you want from your top wide receiver.
That's frustrating hair pulling type of numbers right there.
Oh, man, that makes you want to just burn it all down, as I'm sure you would say, CJ. So, yeah. With that, Julio Jones moving forward, maybe they build some consistency here. Maybe they develop the offense more. Maybe he takes a step forward. He's not over the hill. All the pieces that are important surrounding him are returning, so it's definitely possible. But as of right now, I'm at least taking him where he's going now as a middle second-round pick. I will not be jumping on Julio Jones in the first round. I can safely say that, but I will be shocked if he stays as a second-round pick come draft season. So he may be one of those guys that you're thankful other people are taking because it's moving other guys down your draft board. At least that's the way I'm going to be looking at it. I believe you'll feel the same way, CJ, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's move on. Number 7, we have Brandon Cooks, another one of your guys, CJ. Mm-hmm. Brandon Cooks, much like Julio Jones, very, very hot and cold guy. He lost you a lot of weeks. He won you a couple weeks. So, Brandon Cooks, tell me about him.
Well, like you said, man, he won you a lot of weeks and lost you a lot of weeks. This has been the first year in the Patriots system. I think overall, the numbers that he put up, fantasy points he put up, I think this is good. I think this is okay. This is acceptable being his first year. I'm a little concerned at him going into this upcoming season. You would say why? I mean, you would think that another year with Brady in this offense, it should only go forward and go better. I do believe that, but once again, you got a guy that wasn't out there, that was injured for a lot of the season, well, all of the season, and Edelman. Edelman's coming back, and we already know the chemistry between Edelman and Brady. That's his dude. So as far as touchdowns, if they're not going to Gronk, they're most likely going to go to Edelman, and then Brandon Cooks. He's going to be that third option. I just see that when I look at the track record with this offense. So to me, for if you're looking for a third wide receiver, I mean, you can probably take a shot at him and do that. But as far as production, do you think he's going to put up the same type of numbers, if more, going into this season than what he did past season? I don't know. I think you got to be a little leery going into this year about Brandon Cooks. I like him as a talent, but it's just overall in the system and the top guys that are coming back from injury, I think they're going to take back their role, and then Brandon Cooks will probably still get good touches, probably still get yardage, but touchdowns, like we've been talking about with Julio, I don't think the touchdowns are going to be like that, and it'd be worth for you drafting high for Brandon Cooks.
See, you basically just made the exact point that I was making this entire offseason leading into last year. Right. My concern was his usage, his role in the offense, and his opportunity because of Julian Edelman primarily, because Julian Edelman, like you said, was the number 1 wide receiver. I think Julian Edelman was really the number 2 target behind Gronk. They've got a lot of pass-catching running backs, number of other wide receivers that they like for certain roles, and that's just the way that the Patriots do things. It's a plug-and-play offense. Now, the upside, or I should say the floor, really was raised here back in the preseason when Julian Edelman went down. When he went down, Brandon Cooks, this guy that they, as you commonly were saying, CJ, where they invested so much into trading for, his value shot way up because his opportunity was going up because their number one wide receiver is down. And I expected that Brandon Cooks would step in and be that guy. And unfortunately, by that point, most leagues had already drafted because I would have adjusted my rankings very quickly to give him a bump. I don't know if I would have given him a bump to my number 7 wide receiver, but I would have given him a bump, and it ended up paying off. At the end of the season, he played all 16 games, but very boom bust. He, like I said, he won you weeks, he lost you weeks. 65 receptions, barely. Well, I'll say just under 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns. His touchdowns got you there. It's just one of those things. In the Patriots, he had a great quarterback, he had a great offense to play with, and he was getting volume. But Julian Edelman coming back, this offense taking a step forward. We expect Gronk to be back. If he's not, I'm sure they'll plug someone else in. The volume is suspect, and that's why I can't necessarily believe he will finish where he did right now. And the masses seem to agree. He's currently going as the 11th wide receiver off the board, as the 3rd pick in the 3rd round. And I would say in some ways that feels like good value for him, but in other ways, depending on how this offense shifts, as it always does every year, and this is before the Patriots have even started making any of their classic crazy moves that nobody sees coming, it could be early for him. Does the early 3rd round sound right to you, CJ? With
I think
back.
Everything that we just talked about, I think that's still a little too hot, to be honest. I think you could go late 3rd, early 4th. I think that would be a little better. I think you could feel more better about that and don't feel like you're doing a reach.
Right.
To me.
Because I see his ceiling being exactly where he finished now, but I think his floor drops substantially. So we'll see. Brandon Cooks, your number 7 wide receiver on the season. Many things in the offseason will be telling how we feel about him going into draft season in August. Your number 8 wide receiver finish, I should say. A guy who was scary at times. We're all expecting very big things from, and some would say he underdelivered, but I mean the end result it justified the means. Michael Thomas, he was taken as the number 7 wide receiver, finished number 8. He's currently going as the number 4, so he's getting a big bump. Do you think people are just thinking that the Saints are going to go back to a pass-first offense?
I think people are looking at, once again, his playoff success, because he did have a heck of a game against the Vikings, and that's the guy that we were looking at throughout the whole season. But this team was a run first team, and that's what helped. It helped Breeze, it helped this offense, it got them to where they got them to, and they probably could have ended up going further if it wasn't for a bad defensive play by a defender. So, but I think going in for him being number 4, I think that's a big jump for people, where he's drafting to. And to be honest, I really don't see anything different that's going to happen from this past season going into this season. If it's not broken, don't fix it. And the Saints offense was not broken throughout the whole season. They were running the ball first and passing the ball when they need to. So I don't see them moving and Michael Thomas being that guy again. I think we're kind of getting fooled again if you draft them early and you think something's gonna change. I don't think that's gonna change.
Now, so we have Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, and Odell Beckham Jr. as your top 3 wide receivers off the board right now. Those are your 3 first-round wide receivers. Everybody buying Odell Beckham Jr., the talent, the skill, he'll be back. We already saw him running around doing stuff, and Pat Shurmur being there. We all like the recipe, and I think we all will have him as a top 3 wide receiver with those other 2 guys. The next tier of guys, Michael Thomas leads. It's Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, A.J. Green, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen. Those are all your second-round wide receivers. In a lot of ways, I like him in that group more than I do the first-round guys for a lot of the things you just said. The thing I want to point out here, he was actually really consistent. He played in 15 games last season in 2016. He had 92 receptions, 1,137 yards. This year, he played all 16 games, had 104 receptions, 1,245 yards. Basically, he was on pace to do the exact same thing both seasons from his rookie to his sophomore year. That's great for a team that we saw became very run-heavy. And there, I think it's safe to point that out going forward. The only thing that really dropped off here was he went from 9 touchdowns to 5. But as I always say, touchdowns are fleeting. They're kind of hard to come by. But, I mean, where else are they going to go? He's proven that he's the top target there. the rest of the depth chart, it's a lot of question marks. I mean, obviously they have Ted Ginn, who I think last I heard was contemplating retirement, or were they going to cut him? I don't remember what I was hearing about Ted Ginn, but I've heard reports that they're not expecting him to return. I'll have to look that up again. But Brandon Coleman and Tommy Lee Lewis are the guys behind him. You know, it's a lot of guys. You're like, I don't even know who we're really talking about right now. Willie Snead is there.
I'm about to say Willie Snead. I think Willie Snead had a lot to do with Thomas' production and how good it was this year instead of what we have. I think if Willie Snead would have been healthy and he didn't have to deal with that suspension, I think we'd be looking at Michael Thomas in a different light, because Drew Brees and Snead, they did have a connection, and we were looking at him as a show, being him taking a big step up with Cooks being gone and being that good number 2 guy and possibly eating into Thomas's numbers, to be honest.
Well, I mean, maybe. I could see Willie Snead playing a bigger role. We all thought he was going to this year. He was one of those like kind of late round flyers. Everyone thought that they were like really getting a steal on. But I mean, he played in 11 games. He had 8 receptions. He didn't break 100 yards, no touchdowns. I mean, a massive letdown.
He was out of the loop. He was out of the loop of the offense, you know?
That's exactly what it was. For Ted Ginn, what I was hearing was that they have the out built into the contract. The cap hit for him is 4.5. They can cut him for 2, so they can save some money. And I'll have to see if what I was hearing was retirement news. I can't honestly remember on top of that. But yeah, look, the consistency is there. I don't think any of the other weapons are going to cause them to really take a lot of volume away from Michael Thomas. If they run more to set up the pass, that's great. We're hearing rumors that there might be a return of Jimmy Graham to the Saints, which would be interesting, but that would obviously cap touchdown potential. Michael Thomas, honestly, I think the floor is there. I think that, look, he finished number 8. He's going number 4. That's people, I think, drafting to his ceiling. And can he get there? I would say absolutely. I think the upside is there, especially if they get a little bit more balance with the pass-run ratio. But as a floor play, I'm very comfortable taking Michael Thomas as a second-round wide receiver as my first wide receiver, because it'll be hard to swing that because he's going at the top of the second round. But, I mean, hey, depending on how the draft falls to you, it's definitely possible. And I honestly, come draft season, we get all the offseason hype, we get the news, we get the, the training camp videos, whatever the case may be. I could see a world where Michael Thomas slips a bit, because you're going to see, like I was just kind of mentioning all these other guys. I could see A.J. Green moving up. They're going to fix the offensive line in Cincinnati. Julio Jones always gets a lot of steam, like we were just talking about. Mike Evans will probably be like, oh, he's on this great, comeback. Him and Winston are just connecting like crazy. I could see a world where Michael Thomas drops a couple spots. So you might be able to get a high-round running back and then get him as your number 1 wide receiver at the bottom of the second round. And I would be ecstatic with that 1-2 punch, personally. Would you agree with that? Kind of feeling that?
You can probably talk it to me into it later on the season. Right now, I'm still a little leery.
Yeah, and that's fair. But, again, the masses are higher than both of us are right now because, again, the 4th wide receiver off the board. Not saying he's not deserving, but it's interesting to look at for sure. All right, let's pick up the pace a little bit because we're starting to run a little bit late. We have... Oh, man, I'm glad Jason's not here because we would spend 2 hours talking about him. Larry Fitzgerald getting it done yet again in a year that everyone thought, okay, it's probably his riding off into the sunset season. He had been showing a downtick in production the last couple years and consistency as the season went on. But here he finished as the number 9 wide receiver, taken as the number 25, 152 fantasy points. But as of right now, people seem to be thinking the same thing. He's going as the 22nd wide receiver as the 12th pick in the 4th round. Basically a very nice way of saying a 5th round pick. I have to assume a lot of that is age, and I have to assume a lot of it is not knowing who the heck is going to be throwing him the ball. So, CJ.
That's exactly it.
Larry Fitz, tell me.
I'm about to say that's my exact situation. I'm thinking about it right now. I mean, right now they currently have no quarterbacks on the roster, so you don't know what the heck is going on there. But overall player, the man is Mr. Consistent. He's showing you, man. He can do it with the non-existing talent that's been there. And not taking a shot at Carson Palmer. I'm saying he did do some good work with Carson. He made some good magic, but Carson's not there now. So now we got to go into this next year, seeing what's going to happen. What's happening there, and where's the production coming from? Can he still be that guy with a new kid? He sure can, but you just don't know right now. So where it is. So I think where it stands right now, people taking number 20, 22, that's justifiably so because you just don't know. You know the type of player that he is, well, you just don't know who's going to be throwing the ball. You can throw some free agent scenarios in there to probably talk you into picking up higher, but I think he's a good third receiver on your team, and you be okay with that. And you're definitely not going to reach for him. If he's there and you think it's appropriate to take him there, then you'll take him. But I don't think you're definitely reaching for Larry.
Well, I mean, you got to take a couple things into account here. Like we've now said a couple times, no quarterbacks under contract. Blaine Gabbert, Drew Stanton, Matt Barkley, and obviously retired Carson Palmer. All three of those guys are free agents, and one has retired. It makes it kind of interesting. New head coach, defensive-minded. Mike McCoy's in as offensive coordinator, who has not done well in his last couple stints, and no other real talent around him. Jerron Brown and John Brown are free agents. J.J. Nelson has been good in spurts. It just really leaves Larry Fitzgerald, and we don't know who's going to be throwing him the ball. This is a team that historically hasn't used the tight ends excessively either, Jermaine Gresham, so on volume, maybe. It could be a decent volume play here, and as basically a fifth-round pick, I could see it, but I think that his value is going to adjust rapidly depending on who they bring in, because we reported on Friday's show, I think it was, that he has said that he's coming back, which is great, but he was really kind of falling off if you go back to 2014 before they switched his role in the offense in 2015. Then he's been pretty consistent. He's played all 16 games each of the last 3 years, gotten over 100 receptions each of the last 3 years. He actually went up 2 receptions this year. He has been consistently around 1,100 yards. He's been consistently getting you somewhere between 6 and 9 touchdowns. That's all good, but everything around him is changing, and that's the uncertainty. And I think the boom-bust potential now plays a much larger role than what has been very consistent the last couple of years. It's going to be really telling. So I understand him going later. As the 22nd wide receiver off the board, I have to assume that on name value alone, though, he's probably going to be gone before that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. Just name value alone. I mean, there's a lot of guys that we think they're diamonds in the rough that are good gems that are probably going to get passed up just because an average guy's going to see Larry Fitzgerald, see name value, and pick him a little higher than where he should go.
Good God, I forgot what his cap hit was this year.
Yeah, it was
$16.85 million.
Yeah, man.
That's so much money. All right.
He's the mayor for that team, so of course people are going to pay it. They're not scoffing at it either.
That is his team. Yeah. Holy crap. All right, so, yeah, Larry Fitzgerald. Let's keep it moving. A.J. Green, a guy who kind of fell off as the season went on, but no surprise here. The offensive line, as we said many, many times going into the season, was going to be horrifically bad. It was. They just could not keep this offense moving. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't pass the ball. Andy Dalton struggled to stay upright, and A.J. Green kind of suffered from it, plus being the only real target in the offense because, hey, who else was there? The only other main pass-catching weapon that we would say that was there, Tyler Eifert, went down pretty early in the season. So, CJ, A.J. Green, he was the 5th wide receiver taken. He finished 10th. Yep. So he didn't necessarily disappoint on the total, but obviously he lost you a number of weeks as the season went on, as I said. Going number 6 overall, does that sound right to you? What are your thoughts on him?
Number 6 overall receiver. I think that's putting a lot of faith in everything is going to improve in this offense going into this season. And right now, to me, I think you got to have a wait and see approach with AJ Green in this offense. Name recognition alone, he's that guy. He's shown you that he can be that guy, even with bad situations that there as far as offensive line. Sometimes Andy Dalton, he has these amnesias that he doesn't know how to play quarterback. He doesn't know what he's doing. He'll have some good games. I mean, this is a guy that had a heck of a season a couple years ago, and him and Green were lights out. They do their thing. I think I got to be honest. I feel like his play and numbers probably showed you that he's still good. But I'm looking at it, and I really just don't see AJ Green as that number 1 guy. Like it is. And I might be disrespectful at the moment right now, but I'm just saying, when I look at him and I look at the other number 1 wide receivers out there, and I'm trying to stack up, man, AJ, man, I need some step up, man. I mean, look, I got DeAndre Hopkins out here doing it with nothing at the quarterback position. Nothing. And he's still doing his thing. Now you got a dude, you got that red rifle there, Andy Dalton. He's a guy that people still looking at as a top 15 quarterback. You're gonna have to show me a little more. I'm gonna need some more out of you. And you're the guy. You don't have the same competition or other people there that you had there before. Marvin Jones is gone. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Tyler Eifert, he's barely healthy. So you're the guy. You got to be looking at the guy. Now people might look at that and say, "Hey, CJ, look, he doesn't look at it as all the coverage is coming to him now. He doesn't have that other help." Well, listen, that's not my fault. This is the team's choice. This is what they've done. I'm expecting him to be the number one receiver, to be that guy that's getting that money in that system. I'm expecting ridiculous numbers out of him in that offense. Now I'm gonna give him a pass this past season because we did all expect. I expected a little more out of that offensive line. They let me down, but a lot of people expected it was going to be. So I can give him a pass for this. But this year right here, and if they improve and get on that offensive line, I'm gonna need to see a lot better numbers from AJ Green for justifiably him being in the first round.
The last 6 games of the season, he only had one double-digit game, so that's kind of to what I was talking about before. And it's to all the points that you just said. It's just real. The Bengals are going to be a team that are going to have to be aggressive this offseason. They need a lot of offensive line help. They really need to upgrade their weapons around Andy Dalton because right now you've got A.J. Green. That's really about it. They've got Brandon LaFell and Tyler Boyd as their next couple wide receivers, which are not necessarily household names for good reason.
Not game breakers.
Not game breakers. And then at tight end, of course, there's Tyler Eifert, who's a free agent. And based on his injury history, I don't know if he's going to get another contract anywhere. And then Tyler Kroft behind him, who was serviceable maybe at times. Jeremy Hill's going to probably be gone, but that's fine because we like Joe Mixon there. And if he can get a full workload with Giovanni Bernard, there's some pass-catching options. But those are dump-off guys. It's one of those things where the offense is going to be kind of sputtering unless they can really make some moves because two guys moving the offense, whoever's in at running back and A.J. Green is probably not going to be enough, especially in a really tough defensive division like the AFC North. So he's going to probably struggle. I still think A.J. Green is talented enough and big enough to make mismatches. I mean, the guy is 6'4". I mean, he's crazy fast. He can get it done. He's going to be 30 at the beginning of the season, though, so that's something to take into account. He's getting older, but I don't think he's lost a step at all yet. 6 wide receiver off the board, 6 pick in the second round. I would say that sounds right, honestly, to me, because I think his floor has to rise because I think the Bengals are going to make moves, whether it be through free agency or the draft. What about you, CJ? Does that sound like a good value? Would you take him in the middle of the 6th or middle of the second round? Sorry,
middle of the second round. For me personally, I'm still have to wait and see. But as it stands right now, I'm gonna have to pass on AJ Green at that point. I know I might get a lot of flack out of it, but it's just right now I gotta see more. I gotta see more right now. I'm not into drafting guys just off of name value and oh well, CJ, look at all this. Well, listen, show me something. Show me something. I'm gonna need to see more, bro. I just need to. If I'm drafting you number one and you're my number one receiver, I'm expecting number one legit receiver numbers. I'm gonna need it right now.
His lowest average yards per game in his career and the second lowest average yards per catch of his career this past season. So, yeah, things definitely need to change. There's no denying that. And so, yeah, like I said, the offseason will be telling, but let's keep it moving. Number 11, we have Adam Thielen. Ooh, man, did you get a great return on this guy? He was taken as the 46th wide receiver off the board as the 9th pick in the 10th round. Finished number 11. He's currently going as the number 12 wide receiver as the 6th pick in the 3rd round. And, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of surprised he's going as high as he is, not knowing the certainty at quarterback there. But tell me about Adam Thielen.
Well, dude, listen, first of all, this is a guy that was a no-name receiver, got brought to this organization. And you got to thank Sam Bradford for shedding light and showing you the experience of Adam Thielen. Because this guy came out there and he was just making plays after play with Sam Bradford, man. And then when Sam Bradford went down, had a great beginning this season. Sam Bradford went down. You thought it was going to go down with Case Keenum, but Case Keenum, they found more connections. Stephon Diggs was the one that was suffering a little bit with Case Keenum being in there, and it was Adam Thielen getting it. Now, towards your playoffs and your championships, you probably suffer like I did. For some reason, Case Keenum forgot that Adam Thielen was a thing, or he forgot how to throw the ball to him and get that timing and everything like that. It probably cost you some games. But leading up to that championship games or going into the playoffs, Adam Thielen was straight money for you. Now it's going to be a lot to deal with as far as who's going to be the quarterback at going into this season. The Vikings are dealing with like the Cardinals right now. They got three guys that are potentially going to be free agents. I mean, we all a show think at least two of those guys are going to be coming back. So there's going to be a little cohesiveness there. But overall, Adam Thielen is that guy. A lot of people were drafting him as their number 1-2 receiver. He was finishing your number 1. And I mean, I don't see him changing. I don't see him going anywhere. He's just a legit dude that puts up those good numbers for you, and you can get low, and he produces.
Yeah. I really like Adam Thielen. Between Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, I've always kind of been more in the Thielen camp because he's kind of universal. Stephon Diggs, some inconsistencies. He makes great mismatches, but injuries are concerning too. But Adam Thielen, like you said, has been very good. The quarterbacks is really what's concerning here, but you have to assume that they're not just going to bring anyone in. They're going to bring back one of those three guys or make a run at Kirk Cousins. So you have to assume the situation at the very least is consistent, if not progresses. And who's he really competing with here? Besides Stephon Diggs on right side of the field, Adam Thielen on the left side, you've got obviously Kyle Rudolph, but not much behind him. I mean, literally the guy who plays behind him on the depth chart is Laquan Treadwell, who we haven't seen yet, and we've heard reports that they're going to try and shop because he was a 2016 first-round pick, so maybe they can get something for him. And then was it Jarvis Wright, Michael Floyd, Stacy Coley? I mean, a bunch of people that you're not necessarily going to see supplanting him for volume or touches or opportunities. So I'm really not concerned here. There's consistency across the board. The only players that they're losing on this offense right now, unless something happens via trade or them cutting, is their right guard. So it's going to come down to the quarterback. And I think that consistency shows that this guy definitely has the upside to finish right around where he did. I would happily take Adam Thielen in the middle third round. What about you?
Hey, no doubt, no question.
Yep,
no question. I no question.
Yep, I just want to see the touchdowns come up because if the touchdowns came up,
that's true.
We'd be seeing a guy who probably finished as a top 5 guy.
Listen, Keenum, he blew it, bro. He blew it. There was a couple games he really blew it.
True.
And Thielen would have finished a lot higher than this if that wasn't the case.
Yeah. I mean, he had just under 1,300 yards. It's just only 4 touchdowns, which is obviously kind of makes you sad in fantasy football. Mm-hmm. All right, well, we're way out of time, so let's take this home, talk about the last guy on this list, and somehow...
that's your guy. Your guy.
This is not my guy. Somehow, this is my least favorite guy on the Green Bay pass-catching core, but somehow a wide receiver from Green Bay finished as a number 1 wide receiver, and it's probably because he was the only wide receiver who got targeted, and that was Davante Adams. He was drafted number 21. He went number 12. You say he's my guy. I don't have our rankings in front of me, but I want to remember where I had him listed.
That's your guy. That's your guy. He always for some reason finds a way home on your team, man. He can abuse you, make you look stupid, put up these terrible numbers, but somehow Griffin always finds a home for him, man.
Look, it's because I picked him up in years past as a streaming candidate. Oh God, oh jeez, I just looked it up.
Where'd you have him?
Oh no,
where'd you have him?
I had him as the number 11 wide receiver.
There it is.
Oh man,
you love you some Adams, man.
I have to go back. I have to go back and listen to our shows and remember why. Yes. I mean, I know why, but I mean, come on, because you had him at 18 and Jason had him at 21. So if anything, this makes me look really smart, is what it is. But
all right.
I was by far and away the closest.
All right, okay.
Let me just straighten my tie and get ready for my acceptance speech. But no, Davante Adams, look, he got here on volume. He obviously didn't do it on quality of quarterback play. He had 74 receptions, 885 yards. Neither of those are very exciting. Played in 14 games. He got a couple concussions. 10 touchdowns. I mean, getting double-digit touchdowns generally will get you as a very good fantasy finish, and I mean, that's what he did for you. Now, next year, he's being projected as the number 10 wide receiver. He's going as the second pick in the third round, and I can understand that because the masses are expecting Green Bay to make a move at wide receiver. They think that they're either going to cut Jordy Nelson or they're going to cut Randall Cobb. Both of those guys have contracts that rival the massive one Davante Adams got, and that is a crap ton of money to be paying 3 wide receivers, one of which is very old now, being Jordy Nelson, and one that has been very, very underperforming and inconsistent and injury-prone since he got his contract, being Randall Cobb. Davante Adams, he's the only sure thing, I think, in this offense right now. But I still think that when Aaron Rodgers comes back, Jordy Nelson and him have such a rapport. I don't see them separating with Jordy. And I think as a 1-2, Davante Adams and Jordy Nelson, it's going to be hard to get enough volume to finish as a number 1 wide receiver. But I can see a world where he finishes somewhere around here. His ceiling is definitely around here. I just don't know where his floor is. And it's going to really come down to what this team does. What are your thoughts, CJ?
I mean, I think I'm looking at the thought process like you, man. It's all about what this team is going to do organizationally. They know they need a change. I mean, their guy is still Aaron Rodgers. It's really scary when he goes down. It doesn't happen often, but when it does go down, everything shifts. I mean, and they're not built as a team to be able to overcome that with the current regime there as far as backup play right now. Now, that's no shot on Hundley. He's just not ready. He's just not ready at the moment. I mean, this is it. This is what it is. Now, as far as the talent behind them, I still think they have a good, decent wide receiving core when Rodgers is there. I think really right now, if they kept the same wide receiver core going to this year, Adams can still, you can draft him second, third round, and he still produce for you and probably still come back and produce these same type of numbers plus fantasy points next year and be the 12th wide receiver finishing as a number 1. I think that's not going to be happening. And Jordy Nelson still be good successful. We all love Jordy going into this year, but I mean, when Aaron Rodgers went down, that was basically it. I mean, Hundley could not get the ball consistently, and then to find that chemistry. So that other guy that was benefiting, you thought it would probably be Randall Cobb, but no, it was Adams. Him and Adams was those guys, and that's why, we're talking about Adams here instead of some other people going into that organization. So they need to change. Granted, they do need to do that, and it's going to be interesting what happens going into next year, and is he going to be worth, being the 10th pick in the 3rd round? So
no, it's the second pick in the 3rd round. He's a high third-round pick.
Second.
Number 10 overall.
Wow. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not touching that.
Even after all that talk-up you just did.
Nah, I'm not touching that.
Well, look, behind him, there's not a lot of competition either. I mean, Geronimo Allison, we've seen flashes. Jeff Janis is going to be gone. Those are the next couple of guys that you would name. Tight end is not a position that they really ever use. Richard Rodgers is a free agent. Lance Kendricks is still there, but he didn't really do anything this year, and he's proven to be consistently disappointing. So I just don't see it. But Brett Hundley was able to get Davante Adams as a number 1 wide receiver. Aaron Rodgers is 1,000 times the quarterback that Brett Hundley is. So the upside is absolutely here. Like I said, it's really going to come down to what this team does with Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. I can see a world where they keep both these guys, but I mean, they're going to probably try and clear some cap because they're going to want to make some moves. This is a team that we've heard some rumblings that might go after Jimmy Graham as well if he is available to them. That's someone they can pursue. Ty Montgomery, we're hearing they might shift him back out to wide receiver with the emergence of Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. So that's another guy out of the slot that might be taking some targets away, which is also what I think if they cut Randall Cobb, they're going to fill where he was playing out of the slot with Ty Montgomery. This team's going to look kind of different next year, I think. So all of that will be really telling. As of right now, if things are as they are going into the season, high 3rd round pick, I could see a world where I make that move with Aaron Rodgers in there. It's going to just be very interesting to me. So as of right now, it's the 10th wide receiver off the board. That number is scary, but as a 3rd round pick, I can get more behind that thought process. So it's going to really depend on how the draft falls to me come draft season.
He'll be on your team. I know.
Well, we play an auction draft, so it's going to come out to what his value is, honestly.
Okay. You kids are good together. I see you guys doing.
Are we? I mean, look, he's gotten double-digit touchdowns each of the last 2 years, so, I mean, that's pretty exciting, right?
Yeah, keep talking yourself into it.
Yeah. Has yet to break 1,000 yards, but, whatever. How much I love my yardage. So, all right. So, yeah, how we doing on time? We're way over.
We need to get out of here.
We are
Let's get out of
so
here.
over. So, yeah, we are out of here. That's going to do it for us today. Let me read off those names again really fast because we're not going to recap them on Friday's show. We have Jeez, I already messed it up.
Come on,
DeAndre
guys.
Hopkins.
You can't get his name out your mouth.
DeAndre Hopkins, Antonio Brown, Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill, Marvin Jones, Julio Jones, Brandon Cooks, Michael Thomas, Larry Fitzgerald, A.J. Green, Adam Thielen, and Devontae Adams, your top wide receiver finishers from the 2017 season. Make sure you guys tune in on Friday when things get really interesting because we're going to start deep diving and taking a look at our wide receiver twos from the 2017 season. As always, make sure you guys subscribe wherever you're listening. Please give us a rating, give us a review. If you guys enjoy the show, helps us out a ton. And submit your questions as well. We're happy to answer them. We're pretty responsive, and if you don't get a response right away, check back here on the show because we like to answer things on the show as well. We'll give you a shout out. You can submit those on Facebook at facebook.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics or very easily on Twitter at the FF Fanatics or individually. I am at G Palmer FFF. Again, it's all triple Fs here, the Fantasy Football Fanatics, and CJ is at CJ Hickman 89. So with that, we are out of here. Any parting thoughts, CJ?
Hey, man, Wakanda forever, and, man, please bring some coffee because Friday's show, woo, it's going to be a long one. It's going to be a long one.
It probably is. I mean, this one was already an hour and a half. So we're out of here. Everyone take care. Have a great week. We will see you on Friday. Bye.